Montana Territory, 1879. The wind howled like a warning across the Bitterroot Range, and in a cold, dirt-floored cabin outside the mining town of Garnet, a young woman's life was being bartered like livestock. "You'll take her," Seth Calloway said, slamming a half-empty bottle of rye on the table. "She's strong. She'll do as she's told. I want my payment in gold." Sienna Calloway stood near the door, her arms locked tightly around her own waist, her jaw set. She was 20, tall and freckled from sun and hard work, her long brown hair braided down her back. Her father's words didn't shock her anymore, but this was new. The man across from Seth was an outlaw known in Garnet only as Pike. His black coat was stained with trail dust and his eyes were cold. He looked Sienna over like he was buying a mule. "You said she's obedient," Pike said. Seth nodded, eyes glassy. "Obedient enough, she'll keep her mouth shut. I want the girl ready at sunup. She'll be waiting." Sienna's heart thundered in her chest. "I am not going with him, you are," her father growled. "You're mine to deal with, and I'm done feeding a mouth that talks back." She took one step toward him, but Pike moved faster. He grabbed her arm. "Best you learn now," he said, voice low. "You're mine now." She wrenched free, but her father just turned his back and poured another drink. That night, Sienna did not sleep. She packed the only dress she owned that was not torn at the hem and stuffed her mother's locket into her pocket. At dawn, Pike arrived on horseback. He threw her up onto the saddle like a sack and rode hard south with her clinging to the horn for balance. They rode for miles without speaking. Her wrists ached from the rope binding them together. The sun climbed higher. Her throat dried out. She knew Pike was riding toward the border, maybe across into Idaho or Utah where no one would come looking. She had to find a way out. By dusk, they stopped near a creek and Pike left her tied to a tree while he hunted. When he was gone, Sienna worked at the rope with a sharp stone she found near the roots. Her fingers bled, but she did not stop. When the rope finally gave, she bolted into the brush, ignoring branches that tore at her skirts and skin. She did not know how far she ran. Her lungs burned. Eventually, she stumbled into an open pasture and dropped to her knees, sobbing. A deep voice came from behind her. "Miss." "You all right?" She spun, startled to see a man on horseback, rifle slung across his back. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair curling beneath his hat. His shirt was dusty, but his eyes were kind. "Please," she choked out, "he's after me." The man dismounted fast. "Who?" "An outlaw." "Pike, my father sold me to him." He stared at her, stunned, but then his jaw hardened. "You are safe here. My ranch is just over that ridge. Come on." "I cannot go back." "I am not taking you back," he said. "I am Isaac Ellery. This land is mine." "No one takes from me or mine." Sienna hesitated, then nodded. Isaac moved slowly, offering her his canteen. She drank and climbed onto his horse behind him. Her hands shook as she held his sides. He rode hard but not rough, and soon a wide meadow appeared with a modest house and 2 barns nestled into the trees. As they approached, 2 children burst from the porch. "Papa," the little girl cried, her red hair flying as she ran. "You were gone long, Clara," Isaac said, lifting her into one arm. "This is Miss Sienna. She is staying with us." The boy, maybe 7, stared up with wide eyes. "Is she hurt?" Isaac looked to Sienna. "Are you?" "Just bruised," she murmured. "Come inside," he said. "You need rest and food." That night, Sienna sat at a wooden table with a plate of beans, bread, and a slice of salted pork. The children, Clara and Caleb, ate beside her like it was the best meal of their lives. Isaac said little, but his presence filled the room. After the children were tucked in, he brought her a blanket for the guest bed. "You are safe here," he said again. "I do not know how to repay you." "You do not have to." She looked up at him. "Why are you helping me?" He hesitated. "Because I know what it is to be left behind." She nodded, silent. He left the room without another word. The next day, he found her in the barn, trying to help Clara brush a gentle brown mare. "You do not need to work," he said. "I want to." "I cannot sit and do nothing." He watched her for a moment. "All right," he said, "but you do not answer to anyone here." Pike came 2 days later. Isaac saw him first, riding up the dirt path with a revolver on his hip and a sneer on his face. Sienna was in the garden with Clara when Isaac stepped out front. "I know she is here," Pike said. "She is not yours," Isaac said. "She never was." Pike reached for his gun, but Isaac was faster. He cocked his rifle, aimed square at Pike's chest. "You can turn around or you can die here." "Your choice." Pike hesitated, then spat on the ground. "You will regret this, not likely." Pike rode off. Isaac stood watch until his figure vanished over the ridge. That night, Sienna found him in the barn, brushing down his horse. "You could have been killed. I have had worse odds. You risked everything for me." He looked at her, quiet for a beat. "You are worth it." Her breath caught. "I do not understand you." "You do not have to," he said. "Just stay." "I want to." She stepped forward, slow, unsure. Isaac lifted a hand, brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "I will never sell you," he said quietly. "I will never hurt you." "I believe you," she whispered. In the silence between them, something shifted, not from fear or need, but something honest, something safe. Sienna pressed her hand to his chest. "I feel like I can breathe here." Isaac nodded, his eyes locked on hers. "Then you stay, as long as you want." She smiled, and for the first time in a long time it reached her eyes. The first frost came early that year. It slicked the fences in silver and left the pumpkins in the west fields soft and sagging by morning. Sienna stood at the porch rail, her shawl drawn tight around her shoulders, watching the breath of the cattle rise into the pale sky. Behind her, the kettle hissed. Isaac stepped outside, carrying 2 tin cups. He handed her one without a word and leaned against the post beside her, steam curling up between them. "I've never seen mountains turn blue like that before," she said quietly. "They do it just before the snow settles in. Like the land's holding its breath." She took a sip. The coffee was bitter but warm. "What happens when winter sets in?" "Work slows. We mend things mostly. Harness, fence, boots. Kids start schooling at home again." "You teach them." "I do what I can. Ma taught me letters when I was a boy." "Clara's easy. Caleb gets restless. Can't blame him." Sienna traced the rim of her cup with one finger. "I could help." He turned to her. "With the teaching? I'm no scholar, but I learned enough from a circuit lady preacher who passed through once. She let me copy her Bible verses when Pa wasn't looking." Isaac studied her face. "They'd be lucky to learn from someone like you." She glanced away, her ears hot. "I just want to be useful. You already are." Clara burst through the front door, her braids bouncing. "Papa, the bread smells funny." Isaac chuckled and pushed off the post. "That means it's ready." Inside, the small kitchen was filled with the scent of rising dough and wood smoke. Caleb sat at the table with a battered reader open, his lips moving silently. Sienna moved to the stove, lifting the lid on the Dutch oven. The crust had browned unevenly, but it was bread. Isaac pulled a knife from the drawer and cut thick slices. "We'll eat this with honey." Clara fetched the jar from the pantry. After breakfast, Isaac saddled the gelding and rode out to check the south line. Sienna stayed behind with the children, scrubbing the porch while they played nearby. Clara had a rag doll missing one arm. Caleb carved notches into a piece of pine to make a whistle. The wind carried a scent of wet leaves and pine sap. Later, while kneading dough for supper biscuits, Sienna heard the front door creak open and boots cross the floor. She wiped her hands and turned. Isaac looked tired, flakes of bark caught in his collar. He held a broken fence post under one arm. "Something tore through the outer line, maybe a bull elk. I patched it with wire for now. I'll boil some water. You look cold." He sat at the table, rubbing the back of his neck. "Used to do this all alone. Feels easier now." She filled the basin and set it before him, then knelt to clean the scrapes on his hands. He didn't pull away. "You work too hard," she said softly. He looked down at her. "I don't mind it." She glanced up, her fingers still against his skin. "I never thought I'd be in a place like this, with people who say what they mean. You deserve more than that." "I don't think I ever believed that before." He touched her wrist gently. "Do you now?" She nodded. "I'm starting to." They stayed like that until Caleb's laughter rang out from the loft, breaking the quiet. That night, after the children were asleep, Isaac found her outside. She sat on a hay bale behind the barn, watching stars blink into place. He joined her without asking. "You miss your mother?" he asked after a long silence. "Every day. She died when I was 12. After that, Pa turned meaner. My father passed when I was 16. Ma held on a few years, then the fever took her. I've been on my own since." She glanced over. "Not anymore." He turned his head toward her, his voice low. "No, not anymore." She leaned against his shoulder, and he let her. The barn creaked in the breeze, and the stars wheeled overhead. Neither of them moved for a long time. When they stood, she didn't step away. He reached for her hand, calloused and warm. "Come inside," he said. "It's getting cold." She walked beside him, steady and sure. The first snow blanketed the ridge in silence. Fat white flakes fell steady through the morning, muting the sound of hooves and hammer. Sienna stood by the smokehouse, shawl tucked close, watching Isaac split kindling with clean, rhythmic strokes. A pile of finished wood grew near the back door, each piece stacked with exacting care. She stepped closer, the snow crunching under her boots. "You always work like that?" Isaac didn't pause. "Like what?" "Like the world depends on it being done right." He looked over, wiping the axe handle with a scrap of burlap. "Maybe it does." She glanced toward the hills. "You think it'll be a hard winter?" "Could be." Elk came down early. "Rabbits too thin. Best to be ready." She nodded, then bent to gather the smaller pieces into her apron. "I'll take these in for the stove." He watched her for a moment before returning to the block. "You know, you don't have to prove anything here." "I'm not trying to," she said softly. "I just don't know how to be still." Inside, Clara sat at the table with a square of muslin and a needle clutched in both hands, her brow furrowed as she pulled the thread through, tongue poking out slightly. Caleb was on the floor beside her, arranging pebbles into a strange pattern. Sienna set the kindling by the hearth. "What are you making, Clara?" "A scarf for the doll. Her neck gets cold." "Well, she's lucky to have you." "I'm going to teach her to ride next spring," Clara added, not looking up. "Papa said I could." Sienna's chest tightened. I believe he meant it. Later, Isaac returned with a sack of oats slung over one shoulder. His coat was damp, his jaw shadowed with stubble. He set the sack by the pantry and rubbed his palms together near the fire. "Any travelers passed the ridge lately?" he asked. "No," Sienna replied. "Just the wind," he nodded. "That's good." She hesitated, then said, "You're watching for Pike." "I am. Do you think he'll come back?" "I've known men like him. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they vanish and rot somewhere no one finds. I hope it's the second." Isaac looked up. "He won't take you from here. That's not a thing I'll allow." She stepped closer. "You say that like it's settled." "It is." Their eyes held. She could see the heat of the fire reflected in his and something steadier beneath it. That night, while the children slept, Sienna sat by the fire mending a tear in Isaac's shirt. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed loosely over his chest. "You're good with them," he said. "I was 12 when my mother passed. I kept house after that. Looked after my cousin's boy for a while before Pa sold the wagon team." He shifted his weight. "You want your own someday?" She looked down at the fabric in her lap. "I used to think so. Then I stopped thinking I'd live long enough to wonder. You'll live a long time yet." She met his gaze. "With you, if you'll have me." The fire snapped. Outside, snow tapped the window glass. She set the shirt aside and stood. "I'm not afraid of hard winters." He reached for her hand. "Then we'll face them together." Her fingers threaded through his. "You mean that?" "I do." She leaned into him, her head resting at his shoulder. He didn't speak again, just held her steady as the wind swept down from the trees. The snow deepened with each passing day, muffling the world in white and slowing the pace of life to something quiet and deliberate. Sienna began rising before dawn, pulling on wool stockings and stoking the hearth before the children stirred. The house seemed to breathe in the hush of morning, and she moved through it with a growing sense of belonging, not as someone passing through, but as someone needed. Isaac had taken to checking the traps along the slope near the creek, bringing in rabbits or the occasional fox. One morning he returned with a dark stain on his coat and a sharp edge in his voice. "Found one sprung clean through," he said, setting the trap on the porch. "No blood, no catch. Something learned to take without being caught." Sienna looked up from where she was shelling beans. "What kind of thing does that?" "Something clever. Maybe a cat, maybe a man. You think someone's been near?" Isaac wiped his hands on his trousers. "Could be." Tracks were light, but there. She didn't ask more, but she didn't forget it either. That evening, after the children were asleep and the fire had burned low, Sienna reached for the tin box she'd kept hidden beneath a floorboard near her bed. Inside was her mother's locket and a folded scrap of muslin embroidered with faded initials. Isaac noticed her studying it. Yours, my mother's. She stitched it when she was carrying me. Said she'd name me after the color the sun turns the cliffs at dusk. She ran her fingers over the worn thread. She always said the land remembers kindness. I didn't believe her for a long time. Isaac sat across from her, elbows on his knees. You believe her now? I'm starting to think maybe the land isn't what remembers. Maybe it's the people who walk it. He leaned forward. You've changed since you came here. I had to. No, he said. You just stopped hiding. She folded the cloth again, gently. I don't know what comes next, Spring, calving more fence to mend than I've got hands for, she smiled faintly. That's not what I meant. I know. He reached out, resting his hand over hers, but maybe it's enough to know we'll face it together. She turned her palm to meet his. There's something I haven't told you, he waited. The man who took me, Pike, he carried a letter. Said it was from someone willing to pay more for me than he gave my father, but he burned it before I could read the name. Isaac's brow furrowed. Did he say who? Just that it wasn't about me. That I was part of a debt. I think my father owed more than he let on. Isaac's voice was steady. That debt doesn't reach here. But it might, she said. If someone paid Pike to bring me someplace, they may still be looking. If they come, they'll find I don't bend easy. She looked at him, really looked. You're not afraid? I've lived through worse than fear. She held his gaze. Then I'll stay. No matter what comes. He rose slowly, offering his hand. She stood, slipping her fingers into his. They didn't speak again that night, but stood at the window together, watching snow fall thick and silent beyond the glass. The next morning, Isaac spent longer than usual in the barn. When Sienna brought his coat out, she found him fitting fresh iron to the gate hinges. You planning for a siege? She asked. He looked up, brushing snow off his sleeve. I want things tight before the thaw. She held the coat open for him. You think they'll wait for spring? I think if they're coming, they'll come hungry, she nodded. Then we'll be ready. He slipped his arms into the sleeves and paused, watching her. You've got grit, Sienna. I had to. No, he said again. You chose to. She reached up, brushing a fleck of straw from his collar. I'm still choosing. He didn't ask what she meant. He didn't need to. By late January, the snow hardened to a crust beneath their boots, and the air turned sharp enough to split skin. The woods beyond the pasture stood bare and still, their branches etched against the sky like bones. Sienna stood at the edge of the barnyard with a scarf wrapped high, watching Isaac and Clara walk the fence line with the new pup trailing behind them. The child's laughter drifted back to her, bright and quick, and it struck her in the chest how easily a moment could feel like a life forming. Inside, Caleb sat cross-legged on the floor, bent over a small wooden box Isaac had given him. He had taken to carving anything that would hold still. Sienna crouched beside him, brushing wood curls from his sleeves. What's this one? It's going to be a badger. For the traps, I want to scare him off before they get caught. Kindness like that's rare, he shrugged. Papa says we don't waste what we're given. Doesn't mean we have to like it, she ruffled his hair. He's right. That evening, while the wind pressed against the windows and the lamp hissed low, Isaac pulled a parcel from beneath the bed frame. He laid it on the kitchen table and unwrapped it slowly, a worn leather-bound ledger, the spine cracked, the corners softened by years of use. This belonged to my mother, he said. She kept account of everything: cattle births, seed yields, even the names of men who shorted her at market. Sienna ran her fingers over the first page where the ink had faded to a dusky brown. You keep it going, I write when it matters. There's a page in there for each year. I'd like to add your name to this one. She looked up, not as a guest or a hand. As my wife, the words landed soft, but they held. You mean to marry me in the eyes of the county? I mean to marry you in every way a man can. I've watched you make a home from pieces, steady my children's hearts, stand your ground with more grit than most men I've known. That ledger don't mean much to anyone else, but to me, it's the truth of what's been built here. I want your name in it. She closed the ledger gently and set her palm over it. Then write it. They wed at the kitchen table 3 days later, with Clara clutching a bouquet of dried sage and Caleb standing solemn beside the fire. Isaac read from the family Bible, his voice low and certain. There was no preacher, just the cold wind outside and the warmth inside, and the vows spoken between two people who'd already chosen each other long before the words were said. In the weeks that followed, the land began to thaw. Snow slid from the eaves, and the creek beyond the barn sang again. Sienna dug her hands into the soil behind the house, planting onions and turnips, while Isaac repaired the east corral where the posts had rotted through. They worked side by side, not needing to speak much, their rhythm settled into something quiet and whole. One afternoon, while Isaac was out riding the southern slope, a rider approached from the flats. Sienna saw him from the porch, a stranger on a lean gray horse, his coat finer than anything worn in garnet. She called Caleb inside and stepped down, her hand resting near the rifle hung just inside the door. The man halted a good 20 yards out. He raised one gloved hand, palm open. "I'm not here for trouble," he said. "What do you want?" "I'm looking for a woman named Sienna Calloway. You found her." He removed his hat. "Name's Elias Roth. I own the freight line through Blackfoot Pass. A man named Pike owed me a debt." He offered information in place of coin, said he'd left a girl behind who was worth more than gold if I knew where to look. Sienna's stomach clenched, but her voice held. "That man's dead. I know. Shot trying to rob a stage near Helena. Took 2 guards with him." She kept her eyes on him. "Why come now?" "I've no interest in claiming you. That debt died with him. But I thought you ought to know what he meant to do." She didn't answer. "He meant to sell you to a man in Salt Lake, some merchant with a mind to settle a grudge with your father, like to use you for leverage." "I don't know more than that, and I don't care to. I figure you've had enough of men like Pike." She stepped forward. "What made you change your mind?" "I got a sister in Missoula. She ran from a man once. I didn't help her when I should have." "I'm trying to be different." Sienna looked at the horizon behind him, the way the land opened up beyond the trees, vast and clean. "You've said what you came to say." He nodded once, mounted up, and rode off without looking back. That evening she told Isaac everything over supper. He listened without interrupting, his knife still on the plate. "You think it's done now?" she asked. "I do, and if it isn't, we'll meet it the same way we always have." She reached for his hand, with both feet planted, and no part of ourselves left behind. The days lengthened. The children grew strong and brown in the sun, running free through the pasture. Clara learned to ride bareback. Caleb carved his name into the fence rail near the porch. Sienna's hands turned rough from garden rows, her shoulders stronger than they'd ever been. She no longer flinched at unexpected sounds or looked behind her on the trail. One evening, as the sun slipped low behind the ridge, Isaac lifted her up onto the porch rail, her legs swinging loose over the side. "You ever think about what could have been?" he asked. "I used to," she said. "Now I only think about what is." He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. "I love you," she smiled, her voice quiet. "I know, I love you too." They stayed like that while the light faded, the sky streaked in orange and gold. The land breathed around them, slow, steady, and full of promise. Years passed. The ranch held through dry summers and wet springs, through sickness and harvest and storms that rattled the shutters. But the house stood. The people inside it stood stronger. Clara married a kind boy from town and built a cabin near the north field. Caleb grew tall and sure, taking to leather work and running the cattle drives west. And Sienna, who had once been traded like coin across a splintered table, now walked her land with her head high and her heart full, the locket around her neck and Isaac's hand always close. They grew old together, the two of them, never needing more than what they had. A life built from choice, from endurance, and from the kind of love that didn't shout but stayed.